You meet someone. 5 seconds in, your chest does something. Heart rate up, stomach warm. That electric pull where the room narrows and you think, there they are? You call it chemistry. You call it a sign. 6 months later, you're sitting in your car at 1 a.m., crying for the third time this week, wondering how this happened to you again. You may not fall in love with the wrong people because you ignore red flags. You may fall in love with them because their red flags feel deeply, dangerously familiar to your nervous system. You're not falling in love with the wrong people. You're falling into a pattern your body has known since you were small. And the difference between those two things is the whole video. 3 things matter most here. Why your brain mistakes familiarity for chemistry. The neurochemistry that makes the wrong person feel more intoxicating than the right one. And the practical test that tells you whether what you're feeling is love or a rerun. First, the most important reframe of this entire video. Because if you've spent years dating variations of the same person in different bodies, you've probably told yourself the problem is your taste, your luck, or your worth. Nothing is wrong with you. There's an old template running underneath your conscious choices, and you've been making decisions to match it without ever being shown the map. Attachment theory, developed by John Bowlby, describes how the way you bonded with your earliest caregivers can shape the unconscious patterns you bring into later relationships. If you learned somewhere that love had to be earned, distance does not make you walk away. It makes you try harder. You start wondering what you did wrong, what changed, and how to get back to the version of them that made you feel chosen. Many adults carry insecure attachment patterns without realizing it. It runs quietly in the background, deciding who feels like a soulmate and who feels like just a friend. Psychiatrist Amir Levine, in his book Attached, names one of the most painful pairings, the anxious avoidant trap. The anxious person, terrified of distance. The avoidant person, terrified of closeness. From the outside, it looks like passion. From the inside, it's 2 nervous systems triggering each other in opposite directions and calling the chaos chemistry. Second, let's talk about why the wrong person specifically feels more intoxicating than a steady one. Because this part is the biggest mystery of the pattern. Behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner helped show how unpredictable rewards can make behavior more persistent. Reward something on a predictable schedule, and behavior stays steady. Reward it sometimes hot, sometimes cold, sometimes nothing, and behavior becomes compulsive. This is called intermittent reinforcement. It is similar to the reward pattern that makes slot machines addictive. You never know when the next hit is coming, so your brain stays locked in, refusing to leave the machine. This is how the wrong person becomes addictive. Not because they love you well, but because they keep giving you just enough to believe the love you want is still possible. A little attention, a warm message, one deep conversation, and suddenly your brain forgets the confusion. It starts chasing the return of that feeling. When care comes unpredictably, the nervous system can become more attached, not less, because the waiting starts to feel like proof that the reward matters. Meanwhile, the steady person, the one who texts back consistently, the one who doesn't keep you guessing, that person doesn't trigger the same internal storm. Your brain reads steady as boring, flat, or too easy, because your body may be used to love arriving with tension, love with guessing, love with proving, love with emotional weather you have to constantly read. When peace is unfamiliar, it doesn't feel like safety. It feels like something is missing. In psychoanalytic language, this is sometimes called repetition compulsion, the unconscious tendency to recreate familiar emotional wounds in adulthood, not to suffer them again, but to try to win them this time. If you felt unseen, you may be drawn to someone whose attention feels rare. If you felt rejected, you may chase someone hard to win. If you felt not enough, you may want someone difficult to choose you. You aren't choosing them. You're choosing the chance to finally win a game you were too small to win the first time. Winning them would feel like proof that you are lovable, proof that, this time, the story ends differently. But here's the cruelty of it. The wound cannot be healed by the same kind of person who caused it. You cannot get safety from someone whose entire wiring is to withhold it. Every time you try, you don't heal, you just relive. This is why leaving can feel so hard. You are not only leaving a person, you are leaving the fantasy that this person would finally prove you were enough. And that fantasy can be more painful to lose than the relationship itself. Sometimes you are not attached to who they are. You are attached to who they become for 5 minutes when they are warm. You are attached to the almost, the potential, the version of them that appears just long enough to keep you believing. And here's the part most people never reach. There is a razor-thin line between a person who genuinely feels like home and a person who simply feels dangerously familiar. Two completely different feelings can look identical from the inside. Both feel like instant chemistry. Both feel like I just knew. They are not the same thing. The first is recognition. Your nervous system is genuinely meeting someone new and safe. The body relaxes, the conversation flows. There's interest without panic. It can feel almost too calm because nothing inside you is being activated. The second is recreation. Your body is recognizing a familiar template, and the intensity comes from your body recognizing the exact emotional shape it grew up with. The spike isn't compatibility. It's a memory firing. The test is simple, and most people have never thought to ask it. When you're with them, does your body feel like it's meeting someone new? Or does it feel like it already knows how this ends? New is recognition. Known, for some people, is what they have mistaken for chemistry their whole lives. The wrong person often gives you intensity, but intensity is not the same as intimacy. Intensity is created by uncertainty, by distance, by never fully feeling safe. Intimacy is different. Intimacy is being able to relax, to be known without performing, to ask a question without fearing punishment. But sometimes the absence of anxiety is not the absence of chemistry. It is the absence of danger. A calm connection can feel terrifying when chaos has been your only evidence of love. Many of us were never taught the difference. The environments we grew up in confused the two so completely that by adulthood, we believed calm meant a lack of spark and chaotic intensity meant destiny. You do not need to hate them to be honest about the pattern. You do not need to call them a villain to admit they are not safe for your heart. Sometimes the wrong person is not evil. They are just unavailable in a way that keeps turning your love into anxiety. There's a line worth carrying with you after this video ends. The intense feelings you're having aren't always proof of a soulmate. Sometimes they're proof that your nervous system just recognized something it never finished surviving the first time. And the calm person you keep dismissing as having no chemistry might be the first person who isn't activating an old injury. You don't have to call that boring. You can call it new. Before you go, here's one thing to try in the next 24 hours. A small, deliberate move the next time you feel an instant pull towards someone. Draw an invisible line right down the middle of that attraction. On the left side, isolate the recognition. My body feels slow, open, and genuinely curious about someone new. On the right side, isolate the recreation. My body feels spiking, braced, and is already actively rehearsing how to win their approval. If you let those two columns fuse together, your old pattern can start sounding like destiny. But the moment you separate them, you give your logic the literal breathing room it needs to step back into the driver's seat. You don't have to act on the answer immediately. You just have to know which one you're inside of, before the dopamine takes the wheel and you spend another 2 years finding out what your body already knew on day one. If you've spent years repeating this pattern, try not to hate yourself for it. Ask something gentler and more useful. Why does this kind of person feel familiar to me? What part of me thinks love has to be chased? Healing does not always begin with finding the right person. Sometimes it begins with losing attraction to the wrong kind of intensity. It begins when inconsistency stops feeling romantic and when distance stops feeling mysterious. Attachment patterns can change. Researchers call it earned secure attachment, built slowly, by giving your nervous system enough repeated experiences of safety that it finally learns to recognize calm as love. If you have spent years calling anxiety love, peace can feel like nothing at first, until your body finally understands. Peace is not nothing. Peace is what love feels like when it is not constantly threatening to leave. You stop asking the wrong person to become proof that you are lovable, and you start learning that your worth was never supposed to depend on being chosen by someone who could not choose you well. If any of this hit subscribe and join us. And tell me honestly in the comments, when a spark is instant, does your body feel like it's meeting someone new? Or does it feel like it already knows them? Let's talk.